Discover You Radio's discussions. The full spectrum. The full spectrum. This is the show where we begin an artist's journey to becoming a legendary legacy. We believe every song has a story, and every artist's story deserves a lot more credibility than just being streamed amongst all of the saturated streaming services out there. Each episode, we put a single track under the microscope. We start by giving you a glimpse into the song's story with a brief. Then, our hosts, Robert Simmons and Rita Fox, guide you through a deep dive exploration of the song's artistry and the impact that it's left on Robert and Rita. But the discussion doesn't end there. Dakota Freeman and Lauren Miller take the stage for an intense debate, unpacking the lyrical meaning and arguing their unique interpretations of the story within the lyrical content. Together, we're not just celebrating music, we're building legendary legacies. Discover You Radio's discussions. The Full Spectrum is proudly sponsored by Counterpoint Publishing and is directed and produced under the guidance of Will Stenner. Now, let's uncover the story behind the genius of this soon-to-be legacy after this short word from one of our sponsors. Calling all music lovers. Have you heard of the DML conspiracy? Straight from Houston, this alternative indie rock band is breaking boundaries and delivering music that hits you right in the soul. With powerful lyrics, unmatched passion, and an unforgettable sound, the DML conspiracy is quickly becoming a must-have on your playlist. Want in? Follow them now on your favorite social media platforms for updates, exclusive content, and behind-the-scenes stories. Head over to dmlconspiracy.com to request your favorite tracks on the radio and elevate your Spotify vibe. Don't just listen to music. Experience it with the DML Conspiracy. That's dmlconspiracy.com, where music lives forever.
This is the brief on the $1 trillion legacy of Emsta. Welcome to episode 39 of Discover You Radio's brief. I'm absolutely thrilled, and it's a massive honor and privilege to discuss our success today. You know, Emsta is notoriously hard to write about or even get interviews with without strict permission, but she actually gave us the exclusive green light for this. So we're giving her autobiographical song a full 5-star rating for its undeniable brilliance and success. First, let's dive into her bizarre origin story. 19-year-old Emsta literally became the world's first trillionaire. So how did it happen? Well, on Christmas Eve, she found a strange, glowing cat turd under her tree from a mystery feline. Trusting her gut, she took it to a pawn shop, where it was appraised as a phenomenally rare material worth trillions of dollars. Second, check out her ultimate luxury spree. She went all out, buying a private jet, 50 mansions, that's one in every single U.S. state, and massive yachts across the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. She even built an extravagant private zoo where she just casually walks alongside her very own dolphins, elephants, and lions. Finally, she took things to the next level and built a sustainable mansion on the moon, throwing zero-gravity parties that even Elon Musk wants an invite to. She documented this whole wild ride in her hit song, sending a clear message to us fans to stay bold and curious, because magic can happen in the weirdest guises. Stay bold and keep your eyes wide open, because the key to a glowing life might just be hiding in the strangest surprise.
Stay tuned as Robert Simmons and Rita Fox go into a deep dive as they discuss the genius behind this artist's song as we discover this legendary legacy together. We'll be right back after this word from one of our sponsors. Sound Mind Beats has exclusive music beds made to fit the rap that you just came up with. Why waste your time with a generic pre-programmed beat from a keyboard or music program you just purchased? Do you really want someone saying, I use that same beat in my rap, or I have that same program? Doesn't that make you feel ripped off? Stop feeling ripped off and start feeling original. Go to soundmindbeats.com. That's soundmindbeats.com. And get your exclusive beat that belongs to you and no one else.
Welcome to another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we are analyzing a narrative that honestly sounds like speculative fiction.
Oh, totally.
But it is entirely grounded in recent documented history. We are looking at the sudden and just unprecedented rise of Emsta.
Right, Emsta.
And for those of you tracking the Global Wealth Index, you probably already know that at just 19 years old, she became the world's first individual trillionaire.
First ever.
Yeah, which is hard to even wrap your head around. But what warrants our attention today isn't just the sheer volume of capital she controls. It is the highly unconventional origin of that wealth.
Unconventional is an understatement.
Exactly. I mean, this isn't your standard story of generational real estate consolidation, and she definitely didn't code some revolutionary algorithm in a dorm room. Her empire was quite literally built off a bizarre holiday anomaly.
It really challenges our fundamental understanding of value. We spend our entire lives conditioned to believe that wealth generation follows this specific, predictable trajectory, right? Like venture capital, market disruption, or just strategic inheritance.
The usual paths.
Exactly. But Emsta's trajectory completely disrupts all of that. The assets she accumulated and the infrastructure she built from this single, basically unexplainable event, it forces us to reevaluate how we define opportunity in the modern era.
And to dissect this cultural and economic phenomenon for you today, we are pulling from two primary sources.
Two very different sources.
Right. First, we are looking at the definitive biography, The Golden Feline.
Yeah.
The trillion-dollar legacy of Emsta.
Which is excellent.
It is. But to balance that external financial analysis with her internal perspective, we are also heavily referencing the lyrics of her autobiographical track, the one called The Great Surprise.
That track is just a fascinating primary document.
So good.
It serves as both an autobiography and basically an economic manifesto delivered over a beat. It details one of the most significant paradigm shifts in global wealth distribution we have ever seen.
So our mission for this deep dive is to map the transition from a highly unusual Christmas Eve discovery to a lifestyle that is completely devoid of traditional human limits.
Because the limits just vanish.
They really do. We want to look past the superficial extravagance of the yachts and the mansions and really extract the underlying philosophy that allowed a teenager to capitalize on this event. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Because to understand the trillion-dollar empire, we really have to start at the inciting incident.
The anomaly.
Right. The origin of the Emsta fortune occurred on what was, by all accounts, a completely standard Christmas Eve.
Well, standard right up until she checked the space under her tree.
Yeah, that changed things.
The biography paints this very cozy, traditional holiday scene, but the object Emsta found was definitively not a wrapped present.
Far from it. She discovered a deposit left under the tree by what she describes as a mystery cat.
A mystery cat?
Yeah.
She doesn't mince words.
No, she doesn't. And she specifically notes its location, saying it was just chill in the glove.
Which presents a fascinating psychological threshold.
How so?
Well, if we examine the standard human disgust response, it's a deeply ingrained evolutionary defense mechanism.
Sure. Nobody likes finding something like that.
Exactly. If the average person finds unidentified animal waste in their living room, the immediate reaction is total revulsion.
Yeah, you grab a plastic bag and some bleach.
Right. The protocol is universal. Bag it, discard it in an outside municipal bin, and heavily sanitize the area.
Definitely.
Had she followed that standard protocol, the greatest financial windfall in human history would be slowly decaying in a local landfill right now.
I have to push back a little there, though.
Okay.
You make it sound like it was this purely intellectual choice to examine it. But wasn't it the physical properties of the object that stopped her from just throwing it away?
You mean the glow?
Yeah, the biography clearly notes that it had a distinct glow.
The glow is documented, yes. But having a visual anomaly doesn't automatically override the disgust response.
I guess that's true.
Most people seeing a glowing piece of animal waste would assume it was just a reflection of the Christmas lights. Or worse, some sort of toxic chemical exposure.
Oh, true. They'd probably freak out even more.
They would likely dispose of it even faster. What separates Emsta in this moment is cognitive flexibility. She didn't allow her preconceived notions of what the object should be dictate her actions.
She paused.
She trusted her gut that this was an outlier requiring investigation.
So that curiosity drives her to a local pawn shop.
Yes.
Which from a purely logistical standpoint is hilarious.
It really is.
You have this teenager walking into a neighborhood pawn shop with a glowing anomaly, just asking for an appraisal.
Can you imagine being that clerk?
But that interaction literally changes the global economic landscape. She summarizes the appraisal perfectly in her track, rapping. The dude said, "Girl, you sitting on cash."
Though cash doesn't even begin to cover the economic shockwave of what was actually discovered.
Not even close.
The pawn shop was merely the entry point that triggered specialized metallurgical or chemical analysis.
Because they had no idea what it was at first.
Exactly. The appraisal revealed the material was impossibly rare. So rare that its valuation bypassed the millions and billions entirely.
Yeah.
It was appraised in the trillions.
I struggle to even conceptualize $1 trillion appraisal for a single physical object.
It's hard for anyone to grasp.
How does a market even absorb that kind of sudden value injection without completely destabilizing?
It barely does. An influx of that much sudden, centralized capital gives a single individual the purchasing power of a mid-sized nation.
A nation of one.
And the biography details how she immediately weaponized that capital to just completely reshape her reality.
Right. She transitions instantly into what the book calls a jet fuel high. And while a private jet seems like the cliche first purchase of the newly ultra-wealthy, the sources suggest she wasn't buying it for the leather seats and the champagne.
No, not at all. The jet was purely utilitarian.
Really?
Yes. When you reach that tier of wealth, time and geography become your only real constraints. The private jet wasn't a luxury item. It was a necessary logistical tool to execute the massive real estate acquisition strategy she was about to launch.
Which brings us to the domestic portfolio.
The 50 mansions.
She didn't just buy a mega mansion in Los Angeles and a penthouse in New York. Emsta purchased 50 mansions. That is exactly one estate in every single U.S. state.
It's unbelievable.
Her song references having 50 cribs, giving her the ability to live coast to coast. But practically speaking, why? What is the functional purpose of maintaining 50 separate residences?
It's an assertion of omnipresence.
Omnipresence.
But if we look at the sheer infrastructural nightmare of that portfolio, it is staggering.
Well, I can't even imagine the property taxes.
Maintaining 50 sprawling estates means operating 50 localized HR departments just for domestic staff. It requires navigating 50 different state tax codes, property laws, and security protocols.
What a headache.
Every single house needs to be perfectly climate controlled, staffed, and ready for her arrival at a moment's notice. She essentially had to build a massive corporate ecosystem just to manage where she sleeps.
And evidently, the entire landmass of the United States wasn't enough territory for her.
It wasn't.
The biography and the lyrics both dedicate significant time to her maritime expansion. She launched an entire fleet of mega yachts across the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Indian Oceans.
A real fleet.
And the specific language used across both our sources to describe these vessels is really striking. They don't call them luxury cruisers. They say these yachts are so massive they could bring nations to their knees.
What's fascinating here is how that phrasing completely reframes the traditional concept of extreme wealth. Usually, a yacht is the ultimate symbol of leisure, a private island you can steer. But the phrase, bring nations to their knees, suggests an entirely different motive.
It sounds aggressive.
She wasn't building a vacation fleet. She was establishing a decentralized, floating, sovereign state.
It sounds way more like a naval deployment than a billionaire's hobby.
It really does.
But what is the strategic advantage of maintaining that kind of presence in international waters?
Jurisdiction. When your net worth rivals the GDP of developed countries, you inevitably clash with the regulatory frameworks of single nations.
Red tape.
By maintaining a constant, massive presence in international waters, Emsta effectively placed a significant portion of her assets and her operations outside traditional legal and tax constraints. It was a highly calculated move to secure absolute autonomy.
That context makes the lyrics in her track hit very differently.
Doesn't it?
When she's rapping about this fleet, it's not just a flex of her bank account. It's a declaration of independence from global governance. But she did maintain a massive footprint on land, particularly with her private zoo. She turned her earthly estates into habitats that the biography claims rival national sanctuaries.
The zoo is incredible.
We're talking about elephants wandering the lawns and dolphins swimming in the estate pools.
which again requires a staggering level of specialized infrastructure. You can't just drop a dolphin into a chlorinated lap pool.
I would hope not.
You have to construct state-of-the-art, multi-million-dollar marine biomes. You have to keep teams of top-tier marine biologists on permanent retainer.
The scale is just hard to fathom. She also has big cats roaming freely across the properties.
Yes.
There is an incredibly iconic image of her that serves as the cover of her debut album. It features Emsta walking confidently down a massive gold-trimmed hallway right alongside a full-grown, untethered lion.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that album cover is the perfect visual metaphor for what she achieved.
It really is striking.
Before Emsta, luxury was defined by exclusivity and comfort, insulating yourself from the world. Emsta turned immense wealth into an assertion of absolute fearlessness.
Walking with a lion will do that.
Walking side by side with an apex predator in a residential hallway is a profound statement. It visually communicates that she has conquered not just economic systems, but the fundamental rules of nature.
Wow.
The wealth became a tool to systematically eliminate every conceivable boundary or fear.
And speaking of eliminating boundaries, here's where it gets really interesting.
Here we go.
Once she conquered the land and the oceans, Emsta looked up. She established a sustainable residence on the moon.
Think about the technological and economic leap that represents.
It's mind-blowing.
Space agencies funded by global superpowers spend decades and hundreds of billions of dollars just to put unmanned rovers on the lunar surface.
And they celebrate if it just lands without exploding.
Right. Emsta, leveraging the limitless capital generated from the Christmas anomaly, simply bought her way past the agencies. She didn't just visit space, she built a sustainable mansion there.
It totally redefines the concept of a getaway. Her song details the lifestyle up there, specifically mentioning hosting gravity parties with views of the galaxy that money traditionally couldn't buy.
The cultural impact of the lunar estate cannot be overstated. The moon has historically been a symbol of the unattainable, a frontier reserved for elite scientists and test pilots.
The final frontier.
By turning it into a venue for zero-gravity parties, she aggressively privatized the ultimate scientific frontier, turning it into a bespoke lifestyle destination.
And it completely inverted the power dynamics of the aerospace industry.
Oh, absolutely.
There is a hilarious, yet incredibly revealing line in her lyrics where she addresses the envy of the established space industry titans. She raps. Even Elon's like, yo.
That line says it all.
When the pioneers of private spaceflight are reduced to begging a teenager for an invite to her moon mansion, it's pretty clear who actually holds the power.
It perfectly illustrates the limitations of traditional wealth. Those space pioneers are constrained by quarterly earnings reports, shareholder expectations, and engineering timelines.
They answer to a board.
Emsta is constrained by absolutely nothing. The symbolism of the moon mansion is incredibly potent. The human race is bound to the Earth by gravity. Emsta simply bought her way out of gravity.
Just bypassed physics.
It forces you to trace that entire leap in human capability back to a teenager who decided to inspect something strange under her tree.
Which brings us to the final piece of this puzzle. The art and the overarching message she created from this entire experience.
Right.
Emsta didn't just take her trillions and retreat into the cosmos to live in silence. She utilized her music career to document her journey, releasing an autobiographical anthem.
And she's very clear about her status.
She boldly proclaims herself the queen of the world. And honestly, looking at the lunar real estate and the naval fleet, she undeniably has the receipts.
She definitely does. But if you analyze the lyrics closely, the track isn't purely braggadocio.
No.
Yes, she lists the 50 mansions and the apex predators, but beneath the surface-level bravado, she is broadcasting a very distinct philosophical message.
A message to the listeners.
She uses her unprecedented platform to impart a lesson drawn directly from the inciting incident of her wealth.
And that core philosophy, pulled straight from the sources, is a mandate to never turn up your nose at the unexpected.
Exactly.
She addresses you, the listener, directly through her lyrics. Let me quote the exact lines because they really are the thesis statement of her entire legacy. He says, "Magic can happen in the weirdest disguise, and a Christmas cat turd can change a whole lifetime."
It is a brilliantly unfiltered way to express a highly complex truth.
It's definitely unfiltered.
The universe rarely hands you a life-altering opportunity neatly packaged and clearly labeled as valuable.
It's rarely a giant check with a bow on it.
Emsta's message is essentially a call to action for cognitive openness. It's an encouragement to remain intensely curious about your surroundings and to maintain your focus, even when the opportunity presents itself in a form you'd rather immediately discard.
So what does this all mean for the rest of us who don't have $1 trillion asset sitting under our trees right now?
That's the real question.
I think the takeaway she wants to impart is about the posture we take toward the unknown. Stay curious, stay bold.
I agree completely.
Let's just quickly recap the sheer scale of the narrative we've unpacked today. We started with a 19-year-old girl who suppressed her natural disgust response to inspect a glowing anomaly left by a mystery cat on Christmas Eve.
An anomaly that changed everything.
That single moment of open-mindedness unlocked a multi-trillion-dollar fortune. From there, she bypassed traditional luxury to build a geopolitical footprint. Buying a private jet for logistical speed, acquiring 50 mansions across every U.S. state, launching a fleet of ocean-dominating yachts to secure international autonomy, and building a private zoo where she walks alongside lions.
It's wild to just hear it listed out like that.
And when the Earth could no longer contain her ambitions, she built a sustainable mansion on the moon, hosting gravity parties that left the world's most powerful billionaires begging for access.
It is a breathtaking trajectory that completely redefines human capability. But before we conclude, this raises an important question that I really want to leave you to consider today.
Okay, what is it?
The biography and even Emsta herself in the song lean heavily into the incredible luck of the situation. And undeniably, finding $1 trillion asset under a tree requires a massive stroke of luck.
A 1 in a billion chance.
But was the realization of that wealth truly just luck?
That's the crux of the whole story, isn't it? The asset was there, but the outcome wasn't guaranteed.
Exactly. If Emsta had lacked that inherent open-minded curiosity, if she had simply conformed to what society dictates we do with something completely unappealing and seemingly worthless, that $1 trillion magic would have literally ended up in a municipal trash can.
Gone forever.
The wealth existed independently of her, but it required her specific human mindset to recognize and unlock it. So the question for you to explore on your own is this. What disguised magic are you currently throwing away in your own daily life simply because it arrived in an unappealing package?
That is a phenomenal question to end on. How many metaphorical glowing anomalies are we discarding because we're too focused on the packaging?
Too many, probably.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary life, the logistical marvels, and the unexpected wisdom of Emsta. Stay curious, keep your eyes open for the unexpected, and we'll see you next time.
Stay tuned for Dakota Freeman and Lauren Miller as they get into an intense debate regarding the subject matter of this artist's masterpiece as they give two separate opinions helping to build this legendary legacy. We'll be right back after this word from one of our sponsors.
Coming soon is a collection of micro-stories. Some fictional, and some not so fictional. Events of an ordinary life. Written by the master of micro-stories, Frank Conrad Musumeci. Each story will leave you in suspense and wondering, did this really happen? Or is this made up? Leaving you at the edge of your seat will be an understatement. Because once you start reading events of an ordinary life, you will be floored.
Welcome to the debate. Today we are diving into episode number 39 of Discover You Radio's Discussions. And I have to say, we are just incredibly excited about this one.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is a massive privilege and a real honor to be discussing Emsta's success today. She is, as many people know, notoriously hard to write about or get interviews with without explicit permission.
Yeah, exactly. But she actually gave us the green light on this debate, which is just, it's huge. So today we are engaging in a rigorous analysis of Emsta, who recently became the world's first 19-year-old trillionaire. Specifically, we are framing this discussion as a panel debating the societal responsibility Emsta holds given her unprecedented influence across property, finance, and space exploration. We are looking at her autobiographical song and debating whether we should give this song, and really the philosophy behind it, a 5-star rating on brilliance and success.
Right. And the central question we are unpacking here is this. Does Emsta's astonishing acquisition of wealth and her subsequent massive footprint across the globe represent a triumph of human boldness and cultural inspiration, or does it reflect a profound failure of societal responsibility through unchecked hyper-consumption?
Exactly. And my stance is that her journey from a completely bizarre holiday discovery to her eventual lunar colonization stands as a modern triumph of curiosity. I think she fundamentally democratizes the concept of possibility for humanity, which is why I am giving her success a 5-star rating.
And I come at it from a different way. I will be arguing that Emsta's hyper-accumulation of global resources and her sprawling private infrastructure represent a staggering concentration of wealth, and frankly one that is completely devoid of ethical stewardship or broader societal utility. So I am much more critical of giving this a perfect rating on brilliance.
Fair enough. But to truly understand the phenomenon of Emsta, we have to look closely at her origin story first. It serves as a really powerful philosophical testament to maintaining an open, inquisitive mind. The source text details a narrative that completely shatters our standard paradigms of wealth generation. I mean, on Christmas Eve, rather than dismissing an anomaly, specifically a glowing deposit left by a mystery cat under her tree, she trusted her gut feeling.
Right. She took a massive lead.
Exactly. She possessed the radical openness to inspect the unexpected, taking the sheer risk of bringing this weird, glowing object to a pawn shop for appraisal. And that single moment of curiosity yielded a $1 trillion empire. But it is what she did next that actually defines her legacy, and why I give her that 5-star rating. She channeled this unprecedented capital into pushing the absolute boundaries of human experience. She built a sustainable lunar residence. She translated her journey into autobiographical art with her song. She uses her platform to inspire others, reminding humanity that magic can happen in the weirdest disguise. It's a living testament to the power of never turning your nose up at the unexpected.
I will certainly acknowledge the unique, highly serendipitous nature of her Christmas surprise. I mean, $1 trillion from a feline anomaly is an origin story unlike literally any other in economic history. However, and this is a big however, we have to shift our focus strictly to the material reality of her $1 trillion footprint, because that is where the societal impact actually lands. What we're looking at is a sheer, unprecedented scale of resource monopolization.
Monopolization is a pretty strong word for consumer spending, don't you think?
I see why you'd say that, but look at the scale. For anyone listening, resource monopolization at this level isn't just having zeros in a bank account. It is taking physical space, physical materials, and human labor out of the public sphere and locking it behind a private gate. We are talking about the immediate acquisition of 50 mansions, one in every single U.S. state. We are talking about launching fleets of massive yachts across the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. The text explicitly notes that these vessels are so immense they could bring nations to their knees. Furthermore, she established a sprawling private zoo utilizing exotic animals as personal property. This level of private, unchecked consumption represents a total abdication of the societal responsibility we should expect from someone wielding such immense financial influence.
Let's drill down into that immediate reaction, though. The phase she explicitly describes in her song as a jet-fueled high. You see abdication, but I see an exercise in total personal autonomy. She is completely reshaping the global concept of luxury, scale, and individual agency.
You call it testing the limits of capital, but I look at this jet-fueled high and see a catastrophic misallocation of those exact limits. The moment she acquired these trillions, the immediate transition was to buy private jets and acquire 50 distinct properties to live coast to coast. That is not an aspirational model of success. At a time when housing and resource allocation are critical global issues, purchasing 50 mansions, effectively treating massive residential properties as an interconnected personal playground, is just staggering. The environmental and economic toll of maintaining a cross-country infrastructure solely for one 19-year-old's intermittent convenience is impossible to justify. Think about the local market shocks. When a single entity purchases prime real estate in all 50 states simultaneously, It removes massive swaths of land from public use and inflates localized housing markets strictly for teenagers' vacationing schedule.
I hear that, but she is not a government entity. She is not bound by public policy mandates or municipal housing constraints. She is a cultural pioneer testing what a single human being can execute when entirely unconstrained by traditional financial barriers. The scale of her acquisitions, the 50 cribs, the yachts traversing multiple oceans, forces society to reevaluate the ceiling of private enterprise. She is performing a kind of extreme economic boundary pushing. It's shocking, yes, but it expands our understanding of individual capability in the modern era. And honestly, she is acting as a one-woman economic stimulus in those localized areas.
Expanding our understanding of individual capability doesn't automatically confer societal value, and calling it an economic stimulus ignores the nature of the spending. When her yachts are described as having the capacity to bring nations to their knees, we have moved far beyond personal autonomy and into the realm of geopolitical disruption. That kind of power, wielded purely for a jet-fueled high, lacks the foundational accountability we require of entities with nation-state levels of influence. You simply don't get to deploy an armada and call it a personal luxury.
But I think you're taking the phrase bringing nations to their knees entirely literally. We have to look at this through the lens of hip-hop and pop culture lyrical hyperbole. It is an artistic declaration of her arrival on the world stage, not a literal geopolitical military threat. She isn't blockading trade routes. She is making a statement about scale and arrival.
Even if we accept it as hyperbole, the physical footprint of those vessels across 3 major oceans is undeniable. The consumption itself is the point.
Let's pivot to how she interacts with the physical world then, specifically her deep, fearless connection to nature. You mentioned the private zoo earlier. The text explicitly notes that this zoo rivals national sanctuaries. The imagery associated with her debut album, where she is walking confidently alongside a full-grown lion in a gold-trimmed hallway, is a profound symbol of harmony between human success and the natural world. She isn't just isolating herself in these 50 mansions, she's actively curating a space where she exists alongside the majesty of nature, bringing elephants to her lawns and big cats into her daily life. It represents a really bold synthesis of the wild and the refined.
I have to push back hard on that framing. Keeping elephants on a lawn, placing dolphins in private swimming pools, and maintaining lions and tigers, keeping her zoo strong for personal amusement, is the ultimate expression of dominion, not stewardship.
How is funding a sanctuary that rivals national efforts not a form of stewardship?
Because true conservation involves preserving habitats and respecting the ecological needs of complex creatures. Treating sentient, highly intelligent exotic animals as aesthetic accessories for a trillionaire's compound is an ethical failure. A dolphin in a swimming pool or a lion in a gold-trimmed hallway is not harmony. It is captivity for the sake of spectacle. It costs millions just to feed and house these apex predators. And for what? An album cover? It highlights a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to connect with nature, substituting actual ecological respect with a raw display of purchasing power.
You're applying a rigid, traditional conservationist metric to an entirely unprecedented situation. Emsta operates on a scale where her private sanctuary is noted to rival national efforts. Because of her unlimited capital, she has the resources to provide veterinary care, spatial accommodations, and dietary regimens that likely far exceed standard publicly funded zoological capabilities. She is, in a way, privatizing preservation.
Privatizing preservation by putting a lion in a hallway. The aesthetics alone tell you this isn't about the animal's welfare. It is about the owner's ego.
Well, if we need to talk about her expanding human horizons in a way that truly challenges traditional paradigms, we must look at her most significant technological achievement. Having conquered the terrestrial sphere, she set her sights higher. She built a sustainable residence on the moon. She became the first person to truly live among the stars. She achieved something so remarkable, so scientifically and culturally enviable, that established space pioneers like Elon Musk have reportedly asked her for an invitation. This isn't just a real estate purchase. This represents a tangible expansion of the human frontier.
She proved that private individuals can establish sustainable extraterrestrial living.
Wait, a sustainable residence. Let's look at how the source material actually describes this facility. The text doesn't depict a hub of scientific advancement or an outpost for human survival. It explicitly describes a mansion so fly used for zero-gravity parties where they are popping bottles with flair.
The application might be recreational, but the engineering required is undeniably revolutionary.
The fact that it is sustainable is a bare minimum technological prerequisite for simply not dying on the moon. But the application of this technology matters immensely. This isn't expanding the human frontier for the benefit of mankind. It is the ultimate exclusionary privatization of space. Taking the extreme inequality of Earth and exporting it to the lunar surface so that a select few can enjoy zero-gravity nightlife is a deeply cynical use of trillions of dollars. When Elon Musk asks for an invitation, it doesn't validate the science. It merely reinforces the idea of space as an exclusive club for the ultra-wealthy, rather than a shared human endeavor.
Look at the history of innovation, though. Innovation almost always begins as an exclusionary luxury before it scales to the public. The first automobiles were playthings for the ultra-rich. Early commercial flights were high society experiences. They eventually laid the groundwork for mass accessibility. By proving that a sustainable residence can be maintained on the moon, even if its current primary function is hosting zero-gravity events, Emsta has broken the psychological and logistical barrier to extraterrestrial living. She funded the R&D out of pocket.
The R&D for a lunar nightclub? I am highly skeptical that the engineering required to pop bottles in zero gravity translates cleanly into scalable public housing on the moon. It is an infrastructure built for exclusivity, not expansion.
But she isn't keeping the mindset exclusive. We have to look at her ultimate legacy as an artist and the cultural message she is transmitting through her music. This ties right back into why I give the song a 5-star rating on brilliance. She isn't hiding her wealth or hoarding the secret to her success. She is sharing the philosophical framework that allowed it to happen. She explicitly tells the world to never turn up your nose at the unexpected and to stay bold and curious. She serves as a living, breathing testament that fortune favors the bold. By translating her extraordinary life into accessible art, she empowers her listeners to keep their eyes on the prize and recognize that magic can happen in the weirdest disguise.
The cultural message is actually where I find the most fault. I will concede that curiosity and remaining open to the unexpected are valuable human traits. Absolutely. But we need to call this what it is. She is preaching a philosophy built on literal survivorship bias.
How so?
For anyone listening, survivorship bias is when we only look at the people who won the lottery and assume their strategy works, while ignoring the millions who lost using the exact same strategy. Building an entire philosophical framework around finding a $1 trillion cat turd under a Christmas tree is a textbook definition of this bias. It isn't a replicable strategy. It is a cosmic anomaly. Packaging this irreplicable event into a generic self-help narrative of staying curious is intellectually dishonest.
It's not meant to be a step-by-step instruction manual.
But by wrapping her hyperconsumption in this inspirational message, she effectively obscures the immense societal responsibility she continues to ignore. Proclaiming oneself the queen of the world while sitting on a monopolized empire of wealth suggests that the ultimate goal of human curiosity is limitless personal consumption. It promotes a fantasy that ignores the systemic realities of economics and ecology. It tells people, if you just stay curious, you too can have 50 mansions in a moon base, which is mathematically and ecologically impossible for the masses.
You're taking the lyrical themes too literally again. The message isn't a literal instruction to look for glowing anomalies. It is a metaphor for intellectual agility. Emsta represents the disruption of the ordinary. Before her discovery, she was just an ordinary teenager. Her willingness to investigate something that others would have discarded, to not reject it, as her lyrics state, is exactly the kind of out-of-the-box thinking that drives human progress in science, in art, and in business. Her legacy is one of absolute empowerment. She leveraged a bizarre stroke of luck into unprecedented cultural, spatial, and personal achievements. She didn't just passively accept the wealth, she built empires on the land, the sea, and in space, serving as a bold inspiration to humanity about what is possible when artificial limits are removed.
And my summary of her legacy has to rest on the material impact of those removed limits. While the origin of her wealth is undeniably fascinating and the psychological openness you mentioned is real, her legacy is ultimately defined by extreme ecological and economic monopolization. The 50 mansions sitting empty most of the year, the fleets of yachts masquerading as artistic statements, the captive exotic animals pacing in gold-trimmed hallways, and the private lunar nightclub all point to a profound missed opportunity. Instead of utilizing unprecedented wealth for unparalleled societal stewardship or global problem solving, she has chosen a path of relentless private accumulation. It is a cautionary tale about what happens when infinite resources meet unchecked individual desire.
While we clearly diverge on the ethical implications of her resource allocation, there is certainly a point of convergence we can both acknowledge. Emsta's ascent at just 19 years old and the staggering scale of her empire she has built, spanning from a pawn shop appraisal to a sustainable lunar habitat, are completely unprecedented historical events. She has undeniably and forever altered the landscape of global wealth, our understanding of private infrastructure, and what an individual can achieve in a single lifetime.
Absolutely. The sheer velocity and scale of her transition from a teenager checking presents under a Christmas tree to a global and indeed extraterrestrial financial powerhouse is a phenomenon that economists and sociologists will be forced to study for decades. The structural reality of her empire, regardless of how we judge its utility, is a permanent paradigm shift in human history.
And that reflects the deep complexity of judging historical figures in real time. The tension between individual self-actualization, the drive to test the absolute limits of personal freedom and possibility, and the collective societal responsibility that comes with immense power requires our continuous examination. Her artistic output and her ongoing expansion offer an incredible amount of material for us to explore and debate as she enters her 20s.
The conversation regarding how we balance private ambition with our shared ecological and social realities is far from over. There's much more to be unpacked in how we contextualize figures who possess this magnitude of influence, both on Earth and above it.
Thank you for joining us for this rigorous examination of the Emsta phenomenon. It is a topic that undoubtedly challenges our preconceived notions of wealth, responsibility, and the nature of opportunity, leaving us all with profound questions to consider.
Thank you for listening to Discover U Radio's discussions. We'd like to invite you to research the artist who was spotlighted on this episode and add them to your playlist. If they have a website, join their mailing list. You never know. They just may become the next legendary legacy through Discover U Radio. Because listeners like you made it possible. Thank you for your support.